I've mentioned you like about 100 times on the podcast because you're one of my teaching idols. Like you're one of the guys that I really respect and sort of admired all through the years of watching your career and just trying to be more like yourself. So I want to get into a lot of that.
Well, you're nice to say that.
Well,
sure.
It's well deserved, right? It's kind of, you're the guy that I want to be in 20 years. It's like I've tried to just continue on the path of just evolving, and you're always up with the new trends and new technology, and I just admire that so much. This episode is brought to you by InVeedHemp.com. InVeed has been my choice for my CBD needs for almost a year now, and I can't begin to tell you how it has improved my life. They come in 3 formulas: Clarity, Relief, and Relax. I take a Clarity drop in the morning with my coffee to get me focused, then a drop of Relief for my aches and pains and inflammation after a run or a workout. Then I do a drop of the Relax before I go to bed to help me sleep. I've gotten some of the best sleep that I've had in years, and now with my Whoop band, my recovery band, I can prove it. And now they've come out with a new mixture called Immunity, which we all need to stave off COVID-19. The Immunity Boost is a mixture of turmeric, grapefruit extract, elderberry, licorice root, and vitamin C, which we all could use a little bit more, I'm sure. I just got my first shipment in and took my first drop this morning. They come in drops, which is my choice, a tincture, roll-ons for those aches and pains, and then also gummies, which I think a lot of people out there use the gummies. So you can get it however you choose. So go place your order today. Go to InVeedHemp.com and use the code GURU20 for a 20% discount for life. CBD is a great supplement to keep you healthy and safe during these crazy times. So let's get to this week's episode.
It's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
You know how to cut to the core of me, Baxter. You're so wise. But like a miniature Buddha covered in hair.
I want to become a guru so girls will like me. Then I will like myself.
Now, before we do this, let's go over the ground rules. Rule number 1. No touching of the hair or face.
Of course.
And that's it! Now let's do this! Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Golf Guru Show. I am Jason Sutton, and I am the Guru. I hope everybody is staying safe and healthy during these strange times with COVID-19. I hope it's given you time to get caught up on all the past episodes. Thank you so much for all of your support of the podcast, as it's always been my mission when I started this project to interview the top golf instruction minds in the business, high performers in all fields of study, break them down, get them to share all their stories, book ideas, best practices, and information that has made them great and successful. And hopefully I've delivered on that promise. Make sure you download this episode and all the past episodes. Hit that purple subscribe button so you don't miss any future shows that will be coming your way. And don't be afraid to share it with your followers, as that's the biggest compliment you can give me. I can't tell you how excited I am to have this next guest on, as it's been a long time coming. I've been mentioning his name several times in past episodes, and finally we've connected and we're going to make it happen. And of course, I'm talking about legendary coach, Mr. Chuck Cook. Chuck's bio is too long to list. I'm sure all of you know who this gentleman is. So all I can tell you is he has been a huge influence on my teaching career, as I've always admired his ability to adapt, evolve, and keep up with new trends and technology, as well as keep his basic framework that he still lives by today, which we go into in depth in this awesome conversation. This was a great discussion about many of his tour players that he's worked with, past legends, and then he was very generous to share some great stories and also some great information that I know will help your teaching and coaching out there. So without further delay, I bring you the brilliant and legendary Mr. Chuck Cook. enjoy. And also the current tour players that he's working with as well. I've mentioned you like about 100 times on the podcast because you're one of my teaching idols. Like you're one of the guys that I really respect and sort of admired all through the years of watching your career and just trying to be more like yourself. So I want to get into a lot of that.
Well, you're nice to say that.
Well,
sure.
It's well deserved, right? It's kind of, you're the guy that I want to be in 20 years. It's like I've tried to just continue on the path of just evolving, and you're always up with the new trends and new technology, and I just admire that so much. Chuck, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on the show. Like I said earlier, I've been trying to track you down, and I've mentioned enough times on the podcast that hopefully somebody would hear that would shoot me your number, and you finally found my message. So I really, it's an honor to have you on the show, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, I sure appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me.
So let's start from the beginning. I'm not sure. I know you've been on a lot of podcasts, and it's always interesting to kind of get the backstory of where you began. Like, when did your coaching passion start? And then I want to dive into your influences early on, because I know I've done a lot of research on you, and obviously I've halfway stalked your carear from afar. So I'm excited to hear sort of what you learned from
a tall blonde.
I love it. Yeah, I bet you do. That's awesome. Yeah. So how did you get started in coaching, and we can kind of build your career from there?
Yeah, I was assistant pro. Actually, I've got a great pedigree because of the people that have influenced me. So the first guy I worked for as an assistant pro in Indianapolis was a guy named Lloyd Watkins, who had been Horton Smith's assistant pro.
Wow.
So this goes back for a long time, and he was a great pro. He was a great teacher, a great player, great bench pro, and stuff like that. And so I was lucky. He was tough taskmaster, but I got lucky to really get involved with somebody very influential, at the time. And then I went to work for the Golf Digest schools early on. I started off as a range assistant, and so that was great. I did that from 79 until 91, and that's with Toski and Flick and John Jacobs and Paul Runyon and Costas and all the guys. So that was a huge jump for me to learn from those guys. We would do probably 30, 40 person golf schools around the world at the best resorts in the world, and there'd be 5 teachers for the 40 students, and each night we would get together and talk about each student and what each of us were doing in the area we were teaching. So if you're teaching putting, we're saying, yeah, I'm working with Bill on this, and this. And Toski would say on his full swing, I'm working on this, and this. And so it was a fast track to learning how to teach, that's for sure. And, during that time, I was hired by the Academy of Golf here in Austin. Actually, Golf Digest was hired, and they sent me there to start this golf academy.
Okay.
So I had carte blanche to do it my way. And so what I did, this was 1980, mind you. So what I did was I developed an advisory board of Ralph Mann, who was a biomechanical engineer, Al Vermeil, who was the strength coach for the 49ers, and later on for the Chicago Bulls when Jordan was there. So he had 9 rings as our fitness guy. Dick Coop, Dr. Dick Coop, was our
sports psychologist.
Guy. And then Dave Pels was our short game guy. And so we would do golf schools with one of those being the theme. So we'd have a biomechanical theme, or we'd have a short game theme, or whatever it was, and those guys would be there to participate in it. And that was a huge growth spurt for me. Also during that time, I got involved with Golfing Machine, with Ben Doyle,
Right.
And being in Austin, I studied a lot with Harvey Pinnick. Every Monday I'd go over and watch him teach and do that type of thing. And we were doing seminars, for the PGA. I had the most points of anybody ever in the PGA from teaching seminars, and I was doing them with Bill Strasbaugh and David Ledbetter and Hank Haney and like that. So it was interesting. One of the ones we had a deal with Haney and Ledbetter and myself, and we were talking about swing playing. And so as we went back, David wanted the butt of the club to point inside the ball as he started back, more upright.
Uh-huh.
And I wanted it to point at the target line, and then Hank wanted to point above the target line. And so guys were asking, so there were people there, and they're asking questions. Well, David, why do you want the club steeper right there? You want to point it inside the ball? And David said, well, because good players, the biggest problem they have is that when they drop it, they get it behind them or get stuck, get it too far inside. So I give them room to drop it and not be too far inside. So I get it up right here so that when they drop it, it doesn't go too far inside. So they didn't ask me because mine made too much sense, I think. And then they asked Hank, well, why do you want it pointing above the ball? And Hank says, well, the biggest problem that good players have is they get the club stuck inside, and if I get the club laid off, then they have to steepen the shaft as they come down in order to do that. So there was two guys, famous teachers, that were trying to fix the same problem from totally different avenues. So
turns out they were all sort of right.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Right. Yeah. In fact, it's interesting. I watched Rory McIlroy and his teacher, Banyan, work together, and I've seen them work at both ends of that. I've seen them getting more upright. How he drops it, tends to get stuck. So I've seen them work at more upright, and then I've seen them work it flatter to try to get him to tip it sooner.
Yeah.
So it's so I think we were all right. So
I agree. Yeah,
it was good.
So let's dig into that. I want to go through. I've got these talking points sort of in your career, like you mentioned, Golf Machine. But let's go back to those legends that you grew up learning from, like Jim Flick. Tell me a little bit about how it was to spend time with him, and then also maybe a couple of stories.
Yeah, well, Jim was just to give you some background, there were two guys that started the Golf Digest School, Bob Toski and a guy named Dick Altman, who was the editor of Golf Digest. And Dick fancied himself as a golf teacher as well. And so they started off, they had an advertisement in Golf Digest, you want to take lessons from Bob Toski for a week and go to the Bahamas and this, that, and the other, and so forth. So they started with Toski and Dick Altman. And later on, they added John Jacobs because Altman was writing books with John Jacobs. So they said, okay. So they brought John over, and John would do a school with Dick, and then Tosk would do a school with Dick. And so they were sort of haphazard deals, just show up and go take a lesson, and then go play golf with Bob Toski. It was really what the deal was. And so they wanted to make it a little more formalized, so they brought Flick in, and he organized the whole thing. So he was very, very anal about doing things A, B, C, D. So he had 5 days. So let's do 5-day golf schools. We'll have full swing, short game, da-da-da-da-da. He said, in the full swing, Mondays we'll teach grip and setup. Tuesdays we'll teach backswing. Wednesdays we'll teach transition. Thursdays we'll teach downswing.
Wow.
And Fridays we'll teach follow through.
Okay.
So that was his deal. Of course, Toski would never went along with that. He just did what he did anyway.
Sure.
So it didn't really make any difference. And so it was interesting though, because of the personalities that we got. Davis Love Jr. was one of the Davis Love III's father was one of those teachers, and he was more like Toski. He was more of a field teacher. He had taken lessons from Harvey Pinnick when he was in college and things like that. And then they hired Peter Casas, and Peter had a degree in mechanical engineering, so he was a lot more like Flick. And so he got into the engineering part of it. So it was a heck of a deal. So Flick was the best I ever knew about how to teach people, not what to teach necessarily, necessarily, but how to teach people. He knew how to get the most out of them. He could make them feel good about themselves and yet make them work hard.
Mm-hmm.
And he treated people the right way and motivated them the right way. He was just a phenomenal guy. We always had a good time with him because he was sort of naive about life. And so we'd always tease him. We'd say, "Hey, Jim, there's one of these girls in the school really been interested in you. I don't know if you're." And he was married, he turned beet red. He would never even respond. He'd look away and stuff like that. But he was really one of the great guys in golf, and like I said, very, very organized with what he was doing, and he taught. It was interesting. He had a golf swing that looked like Ben Hogan. It was flat. He had massive leg, and he squashed the crap out of the ball, and this, that, and the other.
He didn't teach that way, though, did he?
Oh no!
I've read his book. His book was one that influenced me how to teach, like, intermediate to beginning players, which I thought was great.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he was very upright, drop club inside, big flip release.
Yeah,
through
that's right.
Track, this, that, and the other. I mean, he would go out and around, and then down cock that thing like you can't believe, and then double squash it against the ground, just smash it at the target. And he could do it when he was 80 years old. He could still beat on it, like that. But he did not teach that. He hated lag. He hated flat. He hated body. He wouldn't let us mention the word shoulders. You couldn't talk about shoulders.
Yeah,
they were out. They were such a poison to the golf swing.
How did you fit into all that? Well, were you just kind of learning from everybody and just finding your way at that point?
Oh yeah, ruined my game. Trying out all that stuff, because I would, when I was a range assistant, when I was working with the full swing guys, I would tee balls for them. So I'd be on my knees down there teeing balls for them, and I would watch them, how they would teach the person they were with. They would coach the person they had just left, and they would analyze the next person that was coming up. And so I would always try and guess what they were gonna teach. And Flick, you knew what he was going to tell the guy. Costas, you knew what they were going to tell the guy eventually. Davis, somewhat, and Toski, you had no clue what he was going to tell the guy. He was such a field teacher, that
right.
You never knew what he'd say. And so there was no rhyme or reason really to it. So it was really a great learning experience, that's for sure.
So once you got your own deal in Texas, you said that's when you got into the golfing machine. Who introduced you to? Did you ever meet Homer, or did you just work with Ben Doyle?
Well, this funny story. I don't know if you've heard of Tom Ness, but
yes,
Tom's
oh yeah,
really a great teacher in Atlanta. Been sick for the last couple of years, which is sad because he's one of my best friends. But anyway, so Tom and I were teaching a golf digest school out at Carmel Valley Country Club, which is where Ben Doyle taught. And so we were watching, man, these guys, his students look good. They look really good and smash the ball. We said, oh, wow, that's neat. So we went over there to watch, and Ben wouldn't let us watch. And so we said, oh, okay, so we went back and we had a golf cart. So we took our camera and we put it and covered it with a box. It just had the lens sticking out of the box. And so we'd film what he was doing over there. Then come back at night and sit there and talk about all the stuff that we'd see with that, trying to poach on his lessons over there.
Huh.
And Ben would, so we'd go over and ask, hey, can we watch you teach tomorrow some? What's 6D-3? No, I don't know what's 6D-3. Well, when you know, then you can come watch me teach.
Oh, he wanted you to learn the book.
Yeah, he wanted you to learn the book before he started watching teach. And so that was basically how it got started. Tom and I both got introduced to Ben. Ben sort of took us under his wing, and that was basically how we got started with the golfing machine.
So you're talking about when you met Ben Doyle and sneaking up on his lessons.
Yeah.
Did that force you to like dig into the book so you could actually start learning from him?
Yeah. And, we would be going there every year, to do golf schools and stuff. And so then one year, Tom and I just stayed an extra week and spent time with him. And that was basically how we got real immersed into it. So that was, during the Golf Digest time as well.
Wow.
And so we had a lot going on. That's for sure.
Yeah, I've enjoyed. I've seen a couple of times at the Teaching Summit, the Top 100 Summit, that you did that presentation on what you learned from the golf machine and then what you still teach today. Could you share a little bit of that, maybe the finer points of that? Because I think it's really interesting.
Well, I think there were a lot of things in the golfing machine that helped me. It's basically, as you know, it's basically a catalog of components,
right?
And how they can be used. And so, but they only have three what they call imperatives. So they only insist on three things that you teach, and that makes it really easy for me as a teacher to build your teaching around that. So one is a good impact position. Two is to arrive at that good impact position with lag. Or on plane, excuse me, with a straight plane line. And then three, to come down the plane line and arrive at a good impact position with lag. Okay, so I don't think anybody can really dispute any of those things as being wrong, and my teaching is really based on that. And then you have all sorts of options. So, you have impact. Is it a flat left wrist? It is if you have a neutral grip. That's what we're looking for. But if you have a strong grip, then you'd have a cupped left wrist. But you'd still have the same shaft length, the same compression, so forth. So then swing plane, if you can be upright and then find the plane coming down so you can have a double shift, or you can stay on planes. So that helped me with Jason Duffner when I worked with him. Most players are upright and then shift down to the plane because of the fact that their lower body, their sequences from the ground up for good players, that shallows the club. And so with Duffner, when we put him on 3D with K-Vest, his shoulders would always peak before his hips. And so his lower body wouldn't create that shallowing effect with the shaft. So the only way he could hit the ball straight really was to keep the club on the elbow plane, or the lie angle plane, if you will, so that, because he wasn't going to shift it back down to that. So if he just put it there, then he could go ahead and cover the ball and go from there. And then lag is really nothing. Everybody teaches lag. Lag is nothing more than a sequence of movement from the ground up.
How would you describe lag if you had to give a definition? Because I think there's a lot of different, thoughts on that nowadays.
When you're talking about lag, most people talk about the angle between the arm and the shaft. But lag really occurs. Lag is everywhere. So like when you put pressure on the foot, the ankle is lagging behind. Then the ankle very quickly gets there, and then the knee's lagging behind. Then the knee gets there, and then the hip's lagging behind. Then the hips get there, and the shoulders are lagging behind. Then the shoulders get there, and the arms are lagging behind. Then the arms get there, and the club's lagging behind. And so it's a sequence of movement that I don't think anybody disputes. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so I think that where it got a bad rep, talking about lag and trying to get players to lag the club, is that players lagged it in the wrong direction. So they would drag the handle down the line as opposed to dragging it up the plane. And so when you get to, I guess I use P term, when you get to P6.
Yeah, you can use that.
When you get to P6, that's the lowest point that your hands are. And from that point on, they're moving up and left. Okay, so if you're lagging, which means you're not flipping the club, but you're pulling that handle in that direction, up and left, then the club's going to line up the way you want it to line up. So it's going to have the right amount of shaft lean for balls on the ground and get zeroed out with the driver if you're pulling that handle in the right direction. And so that's where people got off. There's people always talking about dragging down the line with forces across the shaft and stuff like that. That was really good. Was really good for taking somebody from being an average golfer, like a slicer, into being a good golfer. Where if you lag down the line, you're end to out. You're going to hit hooks. You're going to compress the ball. You're going to smash it still. That's a lot better than the over-the-top, release early, flip, scoop to the, duck slice to the right. I mean, so it really was good, but it didn't get quite far enough. So the things in the golf machine where I didn't get mixed up was with Ben Doyle. His swing always looked a little laid off, and then he would tip the heck out of it coming down, and I always asked him about this. What are you doing like that? He said, well, you have like a short pulley. He says, you're trying to get here so that, it's like your handle is going around this corner real tight, real tight. And so he explained that to me real early. And so it was easy. And Bob Toski had talked about Hogan, and this was 1980. Toski was telling me that. He says, Ben Hogan went left because he had the most lag. So the most lag, if you have lag, you got to go left.
Absolutely.
The more your swing direction's got to be left, right?
Yeah, so, and was that before or after when you met Mr. Hogan? You got to watch him practice, because I want you to share that story, because it seemed like that was part of your evolution of, like, you didn't know what was going on, but you knew you needed to figure it out.
Oh yeah, that was about the same time, because Toski used to talk about Hogan's swing all the time, and and he'd say, he had to go left because he had so much lag. He said, if you have lag, you got to go left. So that was beat into me early. So when we're working on golf machine, talking a lot about lag, like that. Well, I knew it had to go left, and so I was able to help my players then. And I think when the game changed to a game of power, as compared to control, I was ahead of the curve because I had been teaching lag the whole time, so my players all hit it longer than they had before I started working with it. I taught people to increase their distance through the proper use of lag. And so anyway, so you want the Hogan story?
I do. Yeah, I think it kind of ties in nicely with what you just described, which you mentioned, and I'll let you share it. You mentioned how you saw what he was doing, and you're like, wow, he's actually moving the handle up and in to try not to hook it.
Well, what happened was Phil Rogers, I don't know if you know of Phil Rogers, but Phil was
absolutely
a short game teacher, a brilliant mind in the game of golf, really. I mean, it was a big influence with me. It was teaching with Phil. And you didn't want to spend nights with him, though, because you'd get serious trouble. But anyway, so Phil had a friend, a lady that was a member at Shady Oaks, who was a friend with Hogan. And I told Phil, I said, I'd really like to watch Hogan hit balls sometime. And he said, well, let me see if I can get Susie to set it up for you. So he called this lady, Susie Stanley, and she asked Hogan, and Hogan agreed, although Susie was hot, so I think he just agreed because of Susie, not because he really wanted me there. And when I got there, I got that impression that he really didn't want
How old were you at this point?
36.
Okay.
But he was 66.
Okay, so he was later on in his career, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, so it was 1980, and so anyway, they said, well, I got to Shady Oaks. They said, hey, you want to go have lunch with Mr. Hogan? I go, no, thank you. I'll just wait for him. So I was shaking in my boots. So anyway, we went to, he came out and introduced himself. He wasn't too keen about me being there, but he was going to let me do it because he agreed to do it. And so we got in the cart, and I got in the back of the cart because the caddy got in the front with him, and we went out they have a little nine, they call it, at Shady Oaks, and that's where he would practice. And so he would hit balls at his caddy. It takes caddy out there and then hit balls toward him. And so we got out there, and basically what he did is he had about 30 balls in his shag bag. And he would hit even-numbered clubs one day and odd-numbered clubs the next day. And so he'd hit 30 balls with each club. And so he'd just tell his caddy where to go, and then he'd hit for him. And so I watched him. I was caddy view, so I was face on to him. And he would set up, and what he'd do is he'd lag the club back with his hand. Hands would lead the club head a little bit, and then he would rotate the face and cup his left wrist, and the shaft would get laid off. And then anytime I'd ever seen anybody in that position, they'd shanked it. And so I was sort of leaning back when he put it there, thinking, oh, he's going to hit me with this thing, And so he didn't. And then watching him, as I watched him, it looked as if when he came down that he was aiming the sole of the club at the ball. That was the impression you got. That was how shallow it looked like. It looked like the sole of the club was going to hit the ball. So I'm looking for the ball to go real high, and it's coming out medium-high straight balls. And so later on, I figured out that what he was doing, he's going from cupped to bowed.
Sure.
So he's
flexing that lead wrist, shutting it down.
That lead wrist to trap the ball. He's going from flex to bowed to trap the ball. And then he has all that lag, and then he's got all that bow, so the only way to get the ball in the air is to go left. And he was really close. I mean, he looked jammed. His left arm was connected even below his elbow.
Wow.
It was really close to him like that. And so, I was able to figure out what he's doing. And Phil Rogers and I at the time were teaching in and up and across the line, drop it inside, and the underhanded release off a tee. Well, our students could hit high hooks off a tee. They couldn't hit it off the ground. And here's this guy's bashing this thing dead straight at the target. And so the impressions I got, the ball flight with all of his clubs really, is the ball would come out, and it had no upshoot or no tip over, but it'd come out flat, but not low. Not, everybody said he hit low, but not really low. It was sort of medium high, probably 90 foot shots, And the ball would go out there really, really fast, and then it looked like it would just hover over the target. So it'd go, and then it looked like it took a week to come down like a parachute.
Oh, wow.
Coming down the landing like that. And all of it, every club is that way. 3 irons, 2 irons. The driver was real flat. The driver wasn't a high lob or wasn't an upshoot or anything like that. It was the same sort of way. And I watched him, and I didn't start right away, but probably he was, halfway through the first day. I started counting how many steps the caddy had to go to pick up the ball. And so the most steps the caddy had to pick up any ball for the rest of that day and the next day was 8.
Wow.
So
that's tight.
And he only hit it once past the caddy the whole time. He only hit one ball over the caddy. I mean, so the guy had total control of his ball. I mean, he just had total control of his ball. And so it was very, very interesting. His driver would start fast, and then it looked like it would go faster. So it'd go, like that.
Yeah.
And I asked a guy that was worked for True Temper, and I said, what is he doing to the ball to make it fly like that? And he says, well, what happens when you compress the ball, that it gets flat on one side and stuck out on the other, and then it rebounds, and then it reverses and goes back and forth like that. And it does that for a while. And the more you compress it, the longer it does it, and then it goes round. So what you're seeing is that period of time where the ball's flattened and
regaining shape,
rebounding, regaining shape.
Yeah.
And then when you see it where it looks like a turbo boost, that's when it gets round. And he said it's the same thing, same concept that happened when Bubba Watson hit that wedge at Augusta.
Mm-hmm.
Where he drove it out, and he said, it stayed straight because it was mashed and changed in shape during that time. Then once it got round, it took the spin and hooked on around. So he said the same sort of concept. He said, but the only time you ever see guys hit shots that look like that is when the ball is really smashed. So he squashed the heck out of it.
At 66 years old, that's pretty incredible.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was hit hard. You could tell it was hit hard. So the end of the first day, he asked me, he said, well, what do you think, boy? And I said, well, Mr. Hogan, I said, they told me you had a weak grip, but your grip doesn't look weak. But, he set his hands behind the ball so you could see some knuckles. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't sure whether it was just because his hands were back or what, but his grip didn't look real weak to me. He said, after I built the apex shaft, I didn't need a weak grip anymore.
Interesting.
Huh. Because the shaft didn't deflect.
It didn't deflect. Yeah, exactly. Makes sense.
Because he would stress it so much at the top, that it would rebound earlier than other guys because he had such a violent transition,
mm-hmm.
when it came. And then I said, and they told me, Mr. Hogan, that you faded the ball, but it looks to me like you hit it straight. And he goes, it's a fade. I said, well, all right then. Okay.
It's probably because he was used to seeing big hooks, right?
You couldn't see it fade. I mean, it just looked like a bullet. You get behind it and it'd be blanking out that caddy. You couldn't see it anything.
Oh my gosh.
And so, it changed my whole concept, and it still has a huge influence on what I teach today. I think that's the best way. So, like, if you talk about just talking technique for a little while, like there's a big push now to flatten the shaft and bow your wrist, and to do that in transition.
Sure.
Well, he didn't do it in transition. So when he would do it from P4 to P5, the face would stay laying on the plane. So it'd be 90 degrees open.
Gotcha.
Okay. So he wasn't shutting that face. It was shallowing, obviously,
sure.
because all clubs shallow to get to the ball.
Right.
So it was shallowing, but it wasn't closing like that. And then from P5, then he would start covering it. And so he would have a late cover, so he never had a high handle.
And that was more, would you say that's more with his body pivot, right? When from like 4.5 to 6, he had to start rotating, right? Which is what he talked a lot about in his book.
Oh, he's rotated right from the top.
Yeah.
He had some lower body lateral movement, some translation, but he was different than Nicholas because he cleared sooner than Nicholas did.
Nicholas, right?
So yeah, Nicholas was more upright, so Nicholas had to shallow longer, had to take longer time to get it down. So anyway, so I still like that. I still think the highest end of controlling your ball is to have the face laying on the plane at that point, and then covering it that way. Because if you get it shut too early, then when you come down, you've got to hold it, and then that makes you lay the face back. So the loft is always changing through impact.
That's interesting.
You see guys that really get into deep flexion early, then as they come through, you can hit it long and straight that way. But it's much harder to control your distance because the loft's changing through impact like that. And so I don't teach that. I don't want it cupped.
You got to have it moving towards flexion, right?
Yeah, and I just do it later. I
gotcha.
think it gets covered later. So
what's it look? How do you teach sort of 5 through impact? I mean, do you feel like it's still got to be rotating with a little bit of flexion or bow through impact, which creates that lean?
Well, what I think is what I try to teach. Because I only teach competitive players now. So curveballs are really bad news with the guys I teach. And so what I try to teach is where there's very few compensations that you have to make. And so what I like to say halfway back, what I like to see is the shaft pointing on plane, so pointing at the target line. I like to see the lead wrist already flat. I like to see the elbow in front of the body.
Okay.
Like the seam on your, I like to see the elbow in front of your body. And then from that point on, it's just a turn back and then a turn down and through with that. And I feel like that I've had a lot of success getting people to use their right shoulder to cover the ball. And then if you're in that position, then if you try to move your right shoulder down to the ball, then your hands will automatically be in that position,
right,
where you're flexed at impact with the lead wrist. And so, and then a lot of my students, they'll hear me say, shoulder to the wall, shoulder to the ball, cover left. That's sort of what I teach, and so I always feel like the backswing sort of determines what you've got to do on the downswing. And so I try to fix a lot of that stuff with that. So if I can get it simplified to the point where all you're thinking about is one part of your body, then I think then I've done my job.
Yeah, I've heard you talk a lot about sort of trying to get your players back to what you call neutral, right? Would you say that? I mean, we're going to talk about technology here. I'm kind of jumping around here, but this is great. Would you be more of a fan of being zeroed out pathwise, or do you like them playing a little bit on one side of the path, direction or the other? I mean, obviously, when you're dealing with good players, you're dealing with somebody that gets underneath too much, and what you're saying is basically getting them to feel like they're swinging more left to get them less to the right.
Yeah, one thing you don't have to teach a good player is lagging, because they wouldn't be a good player without it. Okay, so you don't have to work on that too much. Some of the girls I do, like some of the college players, Kristen Gilman won a couple of U.S. amateurs and stuff. We had to work on her lag and stuff. But the guy tour players, they already got that. So you're working mostly on getting them to do that on plane.
Yeah.
And so what I like to see is close to zero. I don't allow anything. I shouldn't say this. I don't prefer anything more than 2.5 in any direction.
Okay, I was going to say that was my next question. Is like, what's your parameters look like?
Yeah,
either side.
Like I've been working with Bo Hostler, and I'm teaching him different than I've taught anybody else. So
yeah, he's got a big end out, right? Or he was.
And and Bo is. He was great his first year on tour. He won $2.5 million. Then he made a change, and he got bad, lost his card, and then got it back in the Korn Ferry deal. And then came to me, and so we've been working, and his big problem was he lost his wedge play in his iron play, and so I teach a lot of low spinning wedges, which is what he needed. He was hitting bowling balls and stuff like that, and so he'll get as much as 6 to 7 in to out with a wedge, which is okay with me. I don't mind that.
Gotcha.
And particularly with him. And so basically what I've tried to do with him is use film from how he swung in college, because he was the best college player at the time. He won the Haskins Award. He beat Rahm and Wolf and Hovland and all those guys. He was a better player than they were. And he was a great player until then. So we basically just tried to go back. So I'll give him some leeway on that end out. He can go left, which is surprising because he's so stuck. His elbow's so far behind his body, but he can still go left. He's sort of like Hunter Mahan used to be. He could go left.
Just rotate like crazy.
Rotate like a mother.
Yeah. What? So what's the difference? What did you find when you looked at his film from college than what he's doing now? What are you guys doing to fix that?
Well, what he was doing was he was twisting the shaft a lot, and so when he'd go back, he weakened his grip, and then he'd try to rotate the club as open as he could, and cup his left wrist at the top, and then drop it inside, and then try to release his hands as much as he could. That's what he was being taught at the time.
Gotcha.
And so that's not good for tour golf, and it was really bad for wedge play.
Sure.
With wedge play, you got to launch it under 30 degrees, and you got to hit it under 40 feet, most of the time in order to be a good wedge player. And so he had lost all of that, which he had in college. He was able to do that. So that's what we did. We just tried to get him back to where he's got the club out and around more now. So not rolled in and then getting up and then dropping it in and then flipping his wrist. And so he's out and around and then trying to what he's trying to do. He says, what I'm trying to do is to block it to the right is what he feels like he's trying to do. But with his wrist now in a lot more flex position, the face isn't open, and so the ball goes low and straight and spinny, and he's able to control it better.
What's his stock shot? Is it still like a little draw? Because I know he's always played a pretty big draw.
He wants it to be a draw. I told him, I said, look, you got me in a different world here now because you're way off my model. I want you to know that you're way off my model.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, but he said, I'm hitting my wedges so good now doing this. He said, don't take that away from me. And he's hitting 40-something% of his fairways with his driver. He's long. He's mega long.
Yeah.
He's eighth in driving distance or something. And he's mega long, and I said, I'll do a compromise with you. If you'll practice hitting fades with your driver, never practice hitting a draw with your driver, and then you can go play what you want. When you go play, then I'll let you keep being 7 and 8 in to out with your wedges.
Trying to get him back to neutral, right?
Trying to get him back to neutral. So.
I love it. So what? I know
that driver, he hits it so far.
Yeah.
And he hits. He's hitting less than 50% of the fairways. I mean, I said, you just can't compete doing that, Bo. And I said, so my deal is, I'll let you do whatever you want to do, but I've got to be true to myself. If you're doing something that I don't think will let you reach your goals, I can't go with that. So this will be the compromise I'll ask you to make.
I love it.
So
I want to get into when you were working with some of the legends like Payne, Stewart, and Corey and Tom Kite. But before that, we've had most of the people that have been on here have spent some time with Mac O'Grady. I know you have. Do you have any stories or anything you can tell us about your time with Mac?
I got a lot of stories.
Well, you got to give us something.
I'll give you one that was funny. So, Mac was phenomenal. In the mid '80s, he taught four or five guys that had never won a tournament, and they won a tournament in the same year. So it was Jody Mudd, Tom Pernice, Tom Seekman, Steve Pate, and somebody else in that group. But anyway, they all won tournaments that year. And they all looked alike. They all swung exactly alike when you watched them,
Yeah.
And so that's when I started, going out to study with Mac, So I went out and I took his classes and stuff like that. And it was good. I learned a lot. I learned a tremendous amount from him. And so he liked me, because I was, I had developed some notoriety at that time, but I didn't act like that around him.
Sure.
I was subservient to him because I was there to learn and like that. And so he liked that. So anyway, we were doing the European Teaching Summit over in Nîmes, France. And this is in the 80s. And so Dick Coop and I had gone over, and I wasn't married at the time, I had a girlfriend. And so we had traveled Europe together, and Dick and his wife, and gone around. We get to Nîmes, and the head of the conference, a guy named Donato Di Ponciano, comes up to me. He says, "Chuck, you got to help me." I said, "What?" And he says, "Mac is our big draw this year. Everybody's here to see Mac, and he's not going to present. He's refusing to present."
Oh, God.
And I said, "Why?" He says, "I don't know." He said, "I got no clue." And I said, "Well, let me go talk to him." So I go find him. I said, "Mac, what's the deal, man?" I said, "Everybody's here to see you." And this, that, and the other. He says, "Well, they lied to me." He said, "They told me that I was going to have first-class tickets for me and for Miko, his wife, and they gave coach class for me only." And I said, "Oh, man, that's not right." So I went back to Donato, And I said, is this a true story? He said, well, let me tell you what happened. He said, we at the time, so this will tell you how long ago, this is in the 80s. So at the time, they had arranged it for TWA to give all of us first class seats, okay, for 2 people, for,
wow,
significant other, first class to Europe, And so what happened is Mac kept calling up and changing. Well, I wanted to go, I'd rather go this way. No, I'd rather have this seat and this, that, and the other. He kept calling. And finally, the people he's talking to said, look, this is enough's enough. He says, I've had enough. So he gets up, he gets the phone number of the CEO of TWA and calls him at midnight. Okay. So he calls him at midnight. And he says, he starts complaining. And this guy says, screw this. We're not giving any to anybody.
Oh my gosh.
That. So anyway, so I go back, I said, look, Mac, everybody's here to see you. Just talk, just do your talk. And he said, okay, you're right, I should do that. So I go back to Nod. I said, okay, he'll do it. And he said, find out what he needs. So I said, Mac, what do you need? Do you need, do you got PowerPoint, or it wasn't PowerPoint then? Do you have slides? Do you have videos? He said, I just need my camera. Just need to be able to hook my camera to a screen. That's all I need. I said, okay. So I tell Donat, I said, okay, that's no problem. And so I do my presentation. And then the next day, I go down for breakfast, and I haven't shaved or anything, and I'm in my jeans and so forth. And Mac's sitting there, and he's got Dick Altman's book, Methods of Golf's Masters, and he's drawing lines on it. So he's drawing these lines on these guys' swings. I said, Mac, what are you doing? He says, I'm going to use these swings in my presentation today. And I said, oh, have you got any slides or anything like that? And he goes, no. He says, and I've got a checklist too, P1 to P10 from both views what to look for. I want to give that to these guys. I said, well, do you have that on the slide? No, I don't have that on the slide either.
Oh my gosh.
So I said, okay, so here, let me help you draw the lines and tell me where you want them. And So we go out. So I go with him, and he's last to speak. And the Italians have to leave at noon because they've got to drive back from southern France to Italy to vote. That's their day of voting. And so the Italians are going to have to leave, okay? But having Mac on last is not a good idea. On last, that's where he's following. He's following the putter guy, Swash. He's following Harold Swash. So anyway, so we go out there. So he gets out there, and so I take the book and I tear the pages out of the book and I spread them all over the stage. And then I've got the two forms, P1 to P10, both of them like that, So he'd talk about the Ben Hogan swing, and so I would put it on camera and I'd go over and I'd film it on Ben Hogan's swing like that.
Oh my gosh.
And then he'd go, now here's me swinging like Ben Hogan. So I put it on DVR and I'd have his swing on there swinging like Ben Hogan. Now we're going to talk about Sam Snead. Put it back on camera and
oh my gosh.
With that. So we got through the deal. So anyway, it gets to be 12 o'clock. Mac's going strong. I mean, he's rolling, So Donato's going to me. He's giving me the slash.
Oh no.
List, he says, hey, we got to stop. I've got my hands out like that. This is not
no chance.
So he goes another 30 minutes, and he's giving me the X sign. He's going, we've got to stop. So I take the mic, and I tell everybody, I said, we've got to stop the conference to have the closing ceremony, but Mac will stay here after the ceremony's over for as long as anybody wants. Any of you have questions. So he did. We stayed there till midnight.
That's awesome.
Hanging around there, and so that was the great story about Mac. That's how dedicated he was and how paranoid he was. At the same time.
What were some of the things you learned as far as technically that you left with going to the schools or spending time with them?
The radius locks he talked about a lot. About how to get solid contact. He wanted to. What the radius lock, what you wanted for, extended left leg, ankle over foot, knee over ankle, hip inside knee, left arm straight, left wrist flat, so that you could form full radius. He was the first one to present to me how when you're upright, you got to slide your hips in order to shallow, and if you're flat, then you start rotating sooner.
Mm-hmm.
So that was first presented to me through him, and just a lot of different things. I still look at his notes from time to time about some of that stuff. He talked a lot about everybody talks about shallowing or flattening or this, that, and the other, and he talked about what happens is that your hands just run down your bicep like that.
Yeah, it's just lowering, right? I mean, that's the way I would describe it, rather than shallowing.
It doesn't change angles, but it just runs down your bicep is what he used to talk about that.
Love
and then
that.
Secondary axis tilts, which
mm-hmm.
is
right side bend, yeah.
To where that was that had a lot to do with when I was talking about shoulder to the ball, because your shoulder's going three-dimensionally, down, out, and forward, and
mm-hmm.
so that down is creating that second axis tilt, for you to rotate through. And as you rotate, then you get extension through impact, and your left shoulder goes up and away, and your hands go in and left, and all that sort of stuff. So, and he talked a lot about the difference between what he calls CF swings, which were centrifugal force swings, which
mm-hmm.
were handled down the line and with a flip. And then CP was centripetal force swings, which was where you stayed tight with the handle and you went drag the club up the plane.
More like Hogan, like we were talking about, right?
Yeah, like Hogan. And he preferred CP like that. He had he talked a lot about the early days about rotating as tight a circle as you can, like an ice skater. You can go faster. You can hit the ball farther if you do that.
If the center stays more stable.
Yeah. And so a lot of I like the stuff in the 80s better than the stuff he came up with later. I couldn't do the stuff later because when I stayed that far left, I couldn't get out of it soon enough, and so I couldn't get the ball in the air. And the other thing I found too with him, with his strong grip, and then as he came down, as he went through the ball, he would angle hinge the club,
mm-hmm.
and so the face would look up, and so like I was talking about before, when you get that face looking down too early, then you have to lay it back through. So he laid it back through impact, and so he never could control his distance very well. In fact, he bragged about that. He said, I led the tour in over greens and regulation because he'd have that thing so down, and then he if he didn't get it laid back soon enough, then it would just go forever.
The timing of that lead wrist extending had to be difficult to manage, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. So talk about, kind of go back. You've coached numerous tour players, but a lot of world number ones. But it's kind of started with Payne, right?
Really, the first tour player was Kite.
Okay, so Kite was first, and then Payne.
1980. Yeah, that was when I moved to Austin. And I had watched him. He had worked with Toski, at some of the schools before, and so I had watched him take lessons from Toski and so forth. And then he came out to my academy. I gave this is a good business tip for those guys, but I gave all of the top players in Austin free memberships. And so Kite and Crenshaw and some other guy gave the college team. I said, you can practice and play out here.
So they're right there with you.
I gave the junior champions, women's champions, senior champions, and regular men's and women's city champions. I gave them all free memberships because I wanted them out there, and it was a perfect facility for them, and they appreciated it. And so when you had them there practicing, then everybody in town wanted to come there to practice, and so I sold a bunch of memberships because I had the best players coming out there. And then after we developed that's when Kite met Pels. And so that's when we had Pels on the advisory board. So when I developed the advisory board, then we became world renowned. and we had everybody coming to us back then.
Yeah. So you've got to tell some Payne Stewart stories, because I mean those are classic of just the, and I think it's a great example of knowing your player, right? I mean, it's like you couldn't get technical at all with him. I love the agreement you guys had. You weren't going to change his swing, but you would sort of, as Mr. Pinnock would say, slip it in his food, you know, with moving ball positions around, or like you said, hitting shots under trees and around trees. But give us your time with Payne Stewart.
Yeah, Payne was he was an interesting guy. His ADD, had attention deficit disorder, and so he had been working with Harvey Ward, who was just like Payne. He had ADD too, I think.
Great combination.
So he'd watch Payne. He'd just say, "Low and slow, take it back, low and slow." That's all he'd ever tell him. Okay, and Payne was this great talent, never won. They had never won anything, and so his agent talked him into working with Dick Coop, and so Dick Coop found out that what Payne needed with the way his brain worked is he needed structure. Is that he had all of the feels and inspirations and all that sort of intuitions and all the stuff that you need, but he needed structure. He had no structure at all, and that's why he wouldn't go. So Dick worked with him a lot to have a very consistent pre-swap shot routine, how to signal himself to get into his routine and so forth. And then when I went to work with him, Dick recommended me to him. He said, "That's what you got to do." And so that I developed practice routines for him. I helped him develop strategies for the golf course. We did a lot of games to get him to practice the right things. And so it was just because you couldn't keep his attention otherwise. He wouldn't going to go out there and beat balls or do any of that sort of stuff. And so we had, like, he was really good around the greens with hard shots. So if it was downhill lie, out of a divot, over a bunker to a short pin, he was great, better than anybody else. But hit it 2 yards in the air, landed on the green, let it run in the hole. He just couldn't do it.
The basic stuff.
Yeah, he wouldn't practice.
Yeah.
And so I developed a game like, okay, I put a towel, wet it, and I said, okay, you got to land the ball on the towel and then make it finish within a club length of the hole 9 out of 12 times, you know. And then it was a game. And then he'd get his attention, and then he'd practice it, and he got pretty good at it. And same thing, we did putting drills the same way, all outcome-oriented stuff, you know, with it. And so anyway, his dad had told him never change his swing. And so I agreed with that. He just wanted me to recognize what his good swing was.
Right.
And when he was off of that, then help him get back on it. And so that's what we did. The only time we ever talked about changing his swing one time is after he had won the PGA in '89, and then he won at Hazeltine in '91, the U.S. Open. And after he won the U.S. Open, he panicked because he felt like he needed to play every week like a U.S. Open champion. And so he panicked. He thought he wasn't good enough to represent that title.
Imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah. He said, have I got to, what do I got to do? He said, we got to change my swing. I got to change my swing. I said, no, why change your swing? You just won the U.S. Open. Oh, yeah, boy, we got I said, we agreed not to change your swing. He said, I know, but if you were to change one thing, what would you change? And so I said, okay. I said, so he tended to keep the club upside down for a long, long, long time, and then he would reroute it, set it at the top to where he'd rotate it.
Kind of shut the square.
Shut the square at the top and so forth. And so I said, the only thing I'd do is get you to get the toe up sooner, is the only thing that I would do. And so he could do it immediately. And he just started hitting these balls dead straight, just one after another. Boom, 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 boom. He goes, "Yep, I'm not going to do that." I said, "What are you talking about? You're standing there hitting, this is a stripe show you're putting on out there." "Yeah, but the ball's not curving." I said, "Yeah, that's the deal." He said, "Well, yeah, how do you aim it? I can't play that way. We're not doing that." So that was the whole time we ever went through that. So
it wasn't interesting enough for him, right?
It wasn't. Well, he just, he'd never played that way. So he didn't feel like he could trust that straight ball. That's
wow.
for sure.
How was it working with Corey Pavin? He was definitely a curving of the golf ball guy, right? More like to work it.
Yeah, he came to me because he hadn't won a major, and he wanted to win a major. And I said, well, what do you think you need to be able to do? And he said, well, I need to be able to hit it higher and be able to draw it when I want to. And he had this mega weak grip.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's easy. We'll just strengthen your grip. He said, no, I'm not going to do that because I've tried that before and it was a disaster. And I said, you want to hit a high draw with your left thumb on the other side of the shaft. Okay. So anyway, and he'd take it out and he'd lay it off, and the toe would be wide open, face would be wide open, the top, and be laid off. And then he'd steepen it, come over and bow his left wrist down, swinging left, and he'd hit this low cut shot all the time like that. And so we worked a lot. What I wanted to do is get the handle deeper so that I get the club more across the line, so that he could come more from the inside. And even though the toe was still down, but we did get the shaft shaped to where it was across the line when he wanted it to be. He had cues that he could do that with. And we had a lot of shots with a closed stance to try and to help that, but then also to sort of trap him from getting in front of the ball as he came through, to allow the club to pass it.
Yeah, he was the first person I remember back in the day, like taking those really exaggerated practice swings.
Yeah,
and everybody didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, and that's what his deal was. He was trying to do that to get the handle deep, so he could come from the inside and hit a draw. And so, funny story about that. So we worked on that. I was working with Kite and Payne and Corey. They had me come to the Kemper Open the week before the Shinnecock Open, and it was in Baltimore. So anyway, so I worked with them all. They all finished top 10, so they were all swinging well, and so it was good. And then so I gave them each a day at Shinnecock. So Payne took Monday, and Kite took Tuesday, and Corey took Wednesday. So I gave them each a day that I would spend with them all day. And so, and then I had to leave to go up to Canada to do a golf school. And so I left and went up there, and I'm watching the telecast on Sunday and up in Canada. And I could always tell what kind of shot he was going to play because of the way he rehearsed. And so I watched him rehearse, and he's 18th tee, and he's making that draw rehearsal. I said, perfect. This hole's a dogleg left, forever par 4 up a hill. I said, you got to draw the ball here just to give you a chance to get it, where you can hit something and reach the green, if nothing else. And so he's making it. Then he looks over his shoulder, and he sees Norman in the bunker on 17, and he was a shot ahead of Norman at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I see him go back and rehearse the fade, and he hits his fade out in the fairway like that. And then he's got to hook the forward to get it there. Otherwise, it's not going to get there. So then he hooks his forward, almost holds it.
Yeah, I remember that shot.
Ends up winning, and so I called him that night, and I said, what happened? I said, I saw you rehearsing your draw swing out there on that tee on 18, and then you looked over your shoulder, and then you went to a fade. He said, yeah, I saw Norman over there in the bunker, so I had a one-shot lead, and I knew I could get that fade in the fairway. So
that's awesome.
He said, then I got to the shot, and I realized, holy cow, I have no choice. I have to hook this forward to get it there.
Because he's so far back.
Yeah, I was so far back.
Oh, my gosh.
So it was funny. But it was interesting. We had a real good run. We worked for a year and a half. And he won Riviera, he won Shinnecock, he won the Sun City tournament in South Africa, and then he won Colonial. And so he had a good race. He's a hell of a player, though.
Yeah, he gets so much out of his game. Like, he was so mentally tough, would you not say? I mean, he had to be the mindset had to be crazy.
Oh yeah. It was amazing, really. He was a great putter and chipper, and he had, it wasn't good because of his technique was conventional. I mean, he'd stand there, look like a penguin standing there, and he'd just take his wrist and cock it and just tap down on the ball, and the ball would go in the hole. Or he'd chip it. If he wanted to chip it low, he'd tap it with his hands a little farther forward. And if he wanted high, he'd chip it with his hands. He'd tap down on it with his hands a little further back.
Oh my gosh.
He had control of that ball over that.
Yeah, he did. So you work with Duffner, you get Andrew Landry, and then before you worked a little bit with Luke Donald and Keegan Bradley as well, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about Luke and Keegan. What did you guys work on, and how did it end? I mean, why did they leave?
Well, with Luke, he came to me because he hadn't won a major. So the same sort of deal, and that was sort of my reputation. If the guy I could help guys get to that level. And so he and I talked, first of all, a lot about what he needed. And basically what he needed to do is drive the ball better. Mm-hmm. He was a real bad driver of the ball. And so he was upright, and then he would slide in front of the ball. But when he would slide, he'd never shallow. So he would slide and stay steep.
Yeah.
So he was real steep, and then he'd get to the bottom of the swing and try to shallow it out with his hands. And so it'd be steep, and then flip his hands at the bottom to try to shallow it out and square the face. And so, I mean, he was, 7 and 8 down on a lot of T-ball first started working. And so he and I both agreed that what he needed to do was to become a better driver. And I said, to do that, you've got to start getting some positive attack angles and in order to be a better driver. It's the longest, flattest club with the least amount of loft, so it needs to have the shallowest angle of attack of any of the clubs. And so we want to see if we can hit up on some of these. And so everything we did was to that end. And so he had a real weak right glute, which affected his ability to shallow the club a lot. And he had limited internal rotation of the right shoulder. And so it was sort of like, that's why he swung the way he swung.
Right, because his body would let him.
Can't swing flat like Duffner because he doesn't have the internal rotation to do that, and he can't shallow the club like most guys. So what I did was try to get him to where he was as deep and as flat as he could be, mm-hmm. So that he could get shallow enough to hit up on the ball. And then instead of letting him slide forward, getting him to clear better, clear sooner, so that he was going. And it helped him a lot. It took him a while, though. It took him.
Yeah, I remember that.
It took him a while to get that, and he was. He looked laid off. Everybody beating on me because he looked laid off. And I said, but look at it coming down. It is painting the line.
Yeah.
It was the best, and the numbers were the best he'd had. On our TrackMan, he had, he could get up to 115 miles an hour. So he picked up 5 yards in distance on average for the year, and hit more fairways. And our pass fail was whether he got a plus reading on his angle of attack with his driver. And he had 6 top fives. He had a top 5 in Chicago, where he led in proximity the hole that week. And then he had top 5 in Dubai. I think it was Dubai, one of those Arabian countries over there. Then he had top 5 in Innisbrook. He had a top 5 at Hilton Head. That's where Matt Kuchar holed out.
Right, I remember that.
Out of the bunker to beat him. Yeah. And then he had a top 5 at Wentworth. And then he won in Japan. And so he had a lot of good golf tournaments like that. But basically, he went down in the world rankings and stuff. And he and I talked about at the end of the year, and he didn't do better in the majors, even though he drove the ball better. So he wasn't sold that was the answer, I think.
Gotcha,
really.
Yeah.
But anyway, he said, what do you think? And I said, it's up to you. I said, I think we're going in the right direction, but you do what you think is best.
Right.
He said, I just feel like I'm not working enough on my short game because I have to spend so much time on my long game. And he felt like he was losing some of his short game skills and didn't want to do it.
Interesting.
So that was sort of why, we agreed to part ways because of that. And then Keegan was same time period. And we worked, and basically I never tried to do anything change Keegan's swing because for the last 10 years, up till now, even he's been the best ball striker on tour by far. If you look at his statistics, for hitting it long and straight off the tee and then hitting greens, I mean, he's been phenomenal ball striker. So I never really tried to change anything with his swing. I'd give him some tips because he'd block it every once in a while. I'd get underneath it some and block it every now and then, but that didn't really do much with that. But he was a god-awful wedge player, short game player.
Yeah.
I mean, we went out, we're at Bears Club, and so I said, yeah, let me see you hit the 60-yard wedge shot. So we had it on TrackMan. And so tour players will average around 9,000 spin with a 60-yard shot, a good wedge shot. And he hit it, and this thing went 100 feet in the air, comes down on the green and bounces off the green, rolls and bounces off this big blooper out there. Like, it had 2,000 spin. It had less spin than the driver.
Oh, my God.
And I said, oh, what were you trying to do there? He said, well, I was just trying to hit that green over there, like that. And I said, oh, my God. And so, I mean, he was awful. He was god-awful distance wedge player and a god-awful chipper. Same thing with his chipping. And so we worked really hard on that. And we did do some trajectory control with his long stuff, too. I said, with your short irons, I want you to practice. Just get TrackMan out and get your total height in there. And don't hit anything over 95 feet with anything 9-iron, 3-year wedges. And then we worked on his wedge play, getting him to learn how to flight it down and get spin, and to where he got to be pretty good. And then improved his chipping dramatically. That first year he got up to 12th on tour in scrambling. So that was good.
What did you do technically to change? Like, what was he doing? Was he hitting down too much to cause that, or
a little of both? He was shut, going back, and so then he would lay it back coming through, and so the ball would roll up the face, with no loft. And so we worked on getting the toe up on plane, and they get the handle to go around the corner tighter, and getting the toe up more on the follow through instead of laying the face up through impact. And he got to where he could grip the ball and spin the ball pretty good with his pitch shots and stuff like that. And he had a lot of pain in him too. He could do it.
Yeah, I was going to say his swing, aside from his setup being so low and bent over, his definitely characteristics were more like Payne Stewart.
Oh, he's
more upright.
Really, really gifted. And he was he'd be upright, but then he would lay it off early, as he started down like that. And then he covered the ball. So he wasn't like a lot of upright guys that get steeper, like Luke and Charlie Howe used to get steep early and then shallow late and get the high handle and stuff like that. Well, Keegan didn't have any of that. He'd get upright, he'd lay it off, and then he'd cover the heck out of the thing. And he hit it good. I mean, really, really, really good.
Yeah.
So we worked hard, but the problem was in the middle of the year, he changed to a conventional length putter.
Right.
And he didn't like to work on putting. He didn't believe in practicing putting.
He's a terrible putter too.
So he was a reasonable putter with that belly.
Yeah, with the belly. I mean, once he switched it, killed him.
And that's what happened with he and I. So he played good. He didn't change levels. He didn't drop in the world rankings or anything like that. Played about the same. Finished fourth in the U.S. Open. Had his best British Open. So he had some real signs of positive influence, but the putting just stuck it in there. And so, it was my fault because I should have insisted on working on that putting more than I did. But I didn't.
Yeah.
And I let him have his way there. And that was sort of the deal. He says, well, I just didn't, do what I thought I wanted to do. And I brought that up about the putting. He said, yeah, I know. I said, your chipping's better, your pitching, your distance ways. But yeah, I know. But so that was what happened with that.
Yeah, it's got to be such a fine line with how much to push them and how much to give them a little bit of what they think they need, because the tour players have that sort of mindset a lot of times. Difficult to battle.
Egan's really fragile with that putting. Real fragile with that putting. It would, and he was fragile anyway as a golfer. He told me, the one thing I felt like, even after he got to be a better wedge player, his proximity to the hole and the distances didn't improve as much as I thought they should have. They improved, but they didn't improve as much as I thought they should have. And so I spent more time watching him on the golf course, and I found out that he just very rarely ever took a pin on. So like if a right pin, he'd miss it 20 feet left. A left pin, he'd miss it 20 feet right. I'm just thinking, oh, well, he missed the shot a little bit.
That's where he's aiming.
That's where he's aiming.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It was which I found out late, sort of late working with him because he was such a bad wedge player technically. And so when we did that, and I brought that up to him, he says, I just play to make the cut.
Wow.
That's what I play. He says, I'm so afraid that my game is going to completely disappear when at any minute that I think my game could disappear. I mean, that was shocking. And then after we quit working together, it did for a year.
I remember.
Lost his heart, basically. He had to get back, and then he's gotten some good help since then, and he's back. Which I'm with he and Luke both. I root for both of them hard every week. Love both of those guys.
That's awesome. So what about Duff Daddy? You got to give us a little bit of Duff Daddy, and then we'll get into some swing stuff here and technology.
Yeah, Duff was, Duff had taken lessons from Lane Savoy, who had worked for me. I taught Lane when he was in school, in high school and college. And then after he got out of college, he tried playing for a while, and then he started teaching, so he taught for me. And so he knew a lot of stuff, that I knew. And he was a real keen guy, real smart guy. But he was so tough on those guys that, he'd just tell them, you don't care, you don't work out, he's on Duff and all. Well, you just don't care because you don't work out, and he was so hard on them, that it was just tough for him, it was just tough taskmaster on those guys. And Lane would work out like a fiend and practice. And you're not working on your short game enough, and you're not working on your putting enough. So he'd beat on them, So anyway, Duff has been working with Lane, and had gotten to the I forget what Nike tour, maybe it was Nike tour back then.
Nationwide, maybe, or something.
Yeah, whatever it was called back then. But anyway, so he had been, and he lost his card when he came to see me in 2008, and so he asked me to help him. And Lane had since gone on and become assistant golf coach at the University of Arkansas, and didn't have the time really to spend with his guys after that anyway. I mean, he was working with Chris Tidlin and Chris Cox, some nice players, some good guys. And so Duff and I started working together, and he was more upright and shut. And then he would stay steep. So he was like Luke. He'd never shallow. And so he would stay steep, and he'd come over, get on top of the ball, and then he would lay the face back through impact through the ball. So he couldn't control his distance at all. And then he really couldn't hit it that straight because he was off plane so far. And but he was a tough guy. I mean, he was a tough guy and had great lag. He had a lot of good things in his swing. Had a great lag. He great pitch position and golf machine turns and stuff like that. But he's just off plane, way off plane, and then the face was shut to open always. And so when we worked on getting the face to be more open, it got his swing more rounded.
His arms kind of chased his face change.
Yeah, so it went right around, and it was laying on the triangle plane. And so we did, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but we did K-Vest with him, and his shoulders always peaked before his hips.
Yes, you talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that. And so he never had a shallowing aspect to his swing. And so what we did, that made it perfect. So now he's on plane, and he's got the face square. So all he has to do is cover the ball. I mean, he's got the simplest swing guy. All he's got to do is just drag the thing around the corner, and he doesn't hit anything but straight balls. And I mean, 0.8 was not good enough for him.
Wow.
I mean, you're looking at stats. I mean, he'd take pictures when he'd get 0-0 with both of them. Pace and path.
The unicorns, we call it.
Pace, not path. He wouldn't. It'd be 0.8. He wouldn't show that.
Oh my gosh.
So he was into hitting straight balls, and he could. And when he would cover the ball, he could control his distance again. And so he was. So it helped him a lot. But he was still a bad putter. And his swing was real low became low maintenance after that.
Sure.
Because it was so simple, and he did it all the time. It took him about a year to get it. In 2008, he got his card. In 2009, he made tour championship, which was a big change in his life, because once he made the tour championship, you get better tee times, you play with better players, and he realized he could beat those guys. And so it changed his attitude completely to make him think he was one of the best players out there, whereas before he had this sort of inferiority complex. And so we worked on his putt. I tried to do it conventionally. Mm-hmm. And at Atlanta, when he lost to Keegan in the PGA, I'd had enough of the bad putting. So I said, we're going Runyon. So I said, we're going to turn both hands, one left hand under, right hand under, where you can't flip that. Because he would trap that thing on the ground, and just like he'd roll it and beat down, straight down on the ball, straight up. It was god-awful stroke.
Big over accelerator, too. I remember you showing some of his Sam Putt Lab graphs in a talk that I saw you give, and like, holy cow.
Oh, yeah. And so we went Runyon, and he putted great that week, And so then he changed to a big grip after that, and he putted better. So he putted good in 2011. This is where he won twice, and he almost won 3 tournaments in a row. When he won New Orleans, and he won Dallas, and then he almost won Colonial, lost to Zach Johnson last night. Mm-hmm. But so he was like 85th on tour in putting, which was a huge,
pretty good, for him.
Huge deal from where he was.
How's he doing now? What are you guys? When's the last time you guys worked together? Before the shutdown?
I haven't worked with him in a year and a half.
Oh, okay.
When the PGA was at St. Louis, and I think he's showing some signs of progress. He's working with Lane again.
Oh, okay.
So I think from what he's talking about, I don't really ask him about it. We talk about other stuff, but I don't ever ask him about what he's working on or anything. But from what it seems like, I think he's doing some Rob Neal stuff, So I'm not totally keen on it, because he's more down the line now than what I like, and consequently doesn't have as much lag, and so his iron play is not as good, but his driving is very good. So he's driving the ball good, and he's made some cuts. I think he's still only made about 150,000 this year or something like that.
Yeah,
so,
hasn't been on the radar.
No, and this is his last year of exemption that he had for winning the Memorial Tournament.
Yeah,
he needs to do that. So he's worked hard on his putting, though, with all of the top guys. I mean, he worked with Mike Bentley, and he worked with the guy from Europe, Philip Kenyon.
Yeah.
Phil Kenyon. He's tried as hard as he can to become a better putter. And so he did the arm lock. That was a disaster. Stuff like that. He's tried it all. But, it's funny. You just talk about the frailty of those guys. But, he's such a good ball striker before, that, he won Dallas tournament, and he was last on the field in putting.
I was going to say he ball striked his putting his
ball strike. Yeah,
exactly.
And
it was like Vijay Singh in the old days.
Oh yeah, VJ BJ had the most putts of anybody to win the Masters.
Yeah, it's like in Brody's book, I think he was one of his examples of how you could actually out-ball strike your putting occasionally.
Yeah. So that was the way Duff was. But he's tried really hard. Duff's tried really hard to to do it right. But he tells me, and it takes him so long to hit the putts and so forth. I said, Duff, you're just afraid of those putts. He said, I'm not afraid of them. I promise you, I'm not afraid of them.
Yeah, why does he get frozen over those little ones, I wonder?
Oh, yeah. So I asked him that same question. Why do you get frozen? And he said, when I'm standing over the ball and I see the hole right there, he says, I don't think there's any possible way that I could make my ball go in that hole.
Oh, my gosh.
I don't think there's any way, no matter what I did, that this ball would go in the hole.
Wow.
And so he said, that's his thought. Like 3-4 footer. So
crazy.
No matter, and a lot of times, we'd do sand putt lab and the stroke would green out.
Yeah.
It'd be nice,
That's pressure right there is what that is. Heck,
just, big scar tissue.
Absolutely. So I know you use a lot of technology, and like I said earlier, the thing that I admire about you is you've always evolved over the years with, all the information that's coming out, right? We're able to measure things with 3D and with, the forces and torques. So is there anything that you teach now that has changed over the years that you don't teach back in the day because of the new information?
I would say very little has changed. So I haven't changed much since probably 1996. That was probably the last time I made much of a change in what I teach. And so what's happened is, I was the first guy to use launch monitor to teach. So the old Achiever launch monitor. Some guys had it for fitting, but, I saw it, we got it for fitting, and then I said, hey, this is cool. I said, let's use it for teaching, but we didn't know what the numbers were supposed to be. Tom Kite launches a 6-iron at 16 degrees, so that must be good. You're launching at 24, that must be bad. Looks too high to me.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I've always used that. Like I said, in 1980, we had this advisory board of scientists, basically on there that really was a huge growth spurt for me, and I've tried to stay up with it ever since then. And so so what I found, though, is that all of this stuff confirms basically what I've been doing, which makes sense because I've had success.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, TrackMan, loves lag. Oh, man, it loves lag. It loves a draw. It loves a draw golf swing. And it, when I look at 3D and K-Best, it loves sequence from the ground up. It likes, lag. And so with all of these different things, that we're talking about, doing the foot pressures and stuff like that, has all been stuff that I've taught for a long time. And like I said, I was lucky. I had good training before, so I was able to do it. But I've really come up mostly on my own using that information. I haven't really been a school, been part of a school of teachers like a stack and tilt school or.
Yeah. What? Because every time I show up to open forum or any seminar, you're always there. So you're always paying attention for sure, trying to figure out something, right? What do you use as far as pressure mats? Do you work on that much, or do you sort of?
Yeah, well, I've got swing catalysts.
Okay.
And I've not had much luck. Let's put it this way. In trying to get people to think about pushing down on the foot at this particular moment in time in your swing or anything like that. Okay, so what I've learned, I looked at it, and Scott Lynn, when he came out to train me on it, we looked at it, and they had Kite there, actually. And so we looked at it, and Kite was real good right to left, real good up and down, but real low in rotation, even though his hips were 60 degrees open, but he was low in rotation because it doesn't measure how much your hips are open. measures how you get your hips open. And so I told Scott, I said, oh yeah, so what we need to do is to get his rotation numbers better. He says, no, not really. You probably mess him up. He said, all this does is just tell you how they use the ground.
Yeah.
And so Chris Coleman was the one to talk me into buying it. And so I said, hey, Chris, come here, bud. You're going to have to show me how I can make this thing useful. You know? And so he was, so anyway, so what I found with it, I found almost all the people I teach and is they're real good right to left. I found all good players are good right to left.
Talking about linear, you're just talking about the linear portion of it? Yeah.
Horizontal movement.
Gotcha.
Okay. They're all good. Not always timing wise, but in pressure wise. They're all in the black. Okay. And then I see that you either use vertical or you use torque as the other power producer with your ground reaction forces. Mm-hmm. But rarely do you see somebody high in all three. And so what you see is one or the other. So it makes sense. So like if you're talking about torque, it's measuring the shear force you're applying to the mat. Mm-hmm. And so basically what ground reaction force is if you push against something, like if I pushed against a wall, I would move, my hand would move, but I would move. Okay, so like my feet, if I'm pushing 45 degrees back behind me to the right, I'm a right-handed golfer, mm-hmm. then my body's going to move 45 degrees to the left, like that. And then if I push 45 degrees back, my left foot forward, then my body's going to go 45 degrees backwards, coming back. So I'm going to create that sort of scissoring effect. Mm-hmm. And so with torque, when you have a high amount of that torque, what you see are the guys whose the back foot is on the ground longer. So it's creating more of that shear force pushing back.
Yeah, it's twisting.
It's twisting and pushing back. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you get the guys who are high vertical, like Justin Thomas, you're seeing that right foot off the ground early.
Sure.
They're pushing up early to create their speed through vertical force. And it's not like Justin Rose is high in all three. So
he's the triple threat. I've heard him talk about that.
Threat, but there really aren't many of those guys. And
right.
So that's been an interesting sidelight. And then I like having the trace where you can see. And so what I found with good players, I found that if you have an in-to-out trace, it doesn't necessarily mean you have an in-to-out path.
I agree. Right? Yeah, I've seen that too.
Most of the good players, if they move on an in-to-out trace, they actually go left more.
Yeah.
Because their right side's closer to the ball, so their left arm has to stay more connected to their body to not shake it.
Yeah, and also it's because the ball of the left foot is actually pushing backwards, which helps open them up, which is something I learned from Dr. Kwan not long ago. So I agree. I use Body Track, so I don't have the swing cap, but it's still that one trace doesn't necessarily follow the club, or the club path doesn't necessarily follow the trace all the time.
And a lot of times you'll see guys that are more linear with their trace, and then to reach the ball, their arms have to swing out. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that I've found is that the guys that tend to have more of an end-to-out arc,
like a fish hook.
Our fish hook arc are most of the time the shorter players because their shoulder turn is flatter. And so as they go back, their weight goes more to their heel. And then as they come down, as their right shoulder goes more out, so it goes out over the ball of the foot. And then they need to create their force vertically. And so you can't jump off your heels.
Right.
You have to push with the ball of your foot in order to get to jump. And so the little guys need that vertical force to create speed, whereas the taller guys, their shoulder turns are steeper just because of their height and their size. And so their trace is more linear, and they're big and strong guys. They don't need to create power vertically. And so they're not doing it. And so that's just something I've noticed.
That's cool. So you use it more as like just a baseline information rather than, doesn't sound like you work a lot on footwork. More,
No.
would you say it's more club? The club generates what the body does a lot of times. If you get the club on plane, the body's going to tend to react to that.
Well, I believe the ground reaction forces are exactly that. They're reaction forces, So like, let's say if I get somebody's, let's say, the right shoulder movement better, okay, so pull your right shoulder over your heel, then your weight goes towards your heel, and then drive your right shoulder down and through the ball, you automatically create early transition to the left. You automatically get cleared because you're pushing back off the ball of that foot sooner, and then you tend to stay in your posture longer, so you get more right side bend going through impact. And so by using something other than the feet as the driver, and that doesn't mean that's not what happens. It means that, like in the golf machine, they call a hand-driven pivot. You think, well, that's because the hands are doing all the work. But no, it means that your body is pivoting to make your hands go where you want them to go.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah.
And so a driver so a driver, when I use right shoulder as the driver, it doesn't mean that I think the right shoulder does all the work or goes first or goes fastest. It means that by telling my body, I want to put my right shoulder in that position, it's going to do all of the right things. It's going to shift to the left, it's going to clear my hips, it's going to make me get more right side bend as I come through. So the rest of my body is moving correctly to accommodate the movement of the right shoulder.
Which is why you get reaction forces. I like that.
Exactly.
That's right. Yeah, it's like, how big is intention in the golf swing, right? In our coaching is getting somebody's player the intended movement or whatever we want them to do, that hopefully creates that domino effect of fixing the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I'd like to see a little bit more in some of these, some of the teaching. Since I've been quarantined, I've gone back and I looked at my instructor training manual, and so one of the sections in that instructor training manual is error correction. Okay, so, and I base it on the impact factor. So it's how to get the club face more closed or how to get the club face more open at impact. Okay, and then how to get the path more to the right, how to get the path more to the left, how to hit down less or up more, how to hit it not in the toe, not in the heel, not in the bottom, more in the center, and how to get more speed or less speed. Okay, if I'm hitting a pitch guy.
Right.
So that's the basis of error correction, and then I break it down to where you have like pre-swing. Okay, so what can I do pre-swing, and then what can I do backswing, and then what can I do downswing. And then with each one of those, I have the tools that I use to teach that. So verbally, visually, drills and aids, kinesthetically, how to communicate that. Okay? So this is gold for these guys.
Yes.
I'm telling you. So let's just take club face position. Okay? So you and I go right through it. So if I want to get a club face more closed at impact. Okay, so pre-swing, what would be the obvious?
You just turn the face to the left,
or which in effect
strengthen the grip.
Yeah,
strengthen the attachment. Yes.
Yeah. So in effect, basically, so the principles involved with club face are grip and wrist action. Correct.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Those would be the two things that influence where the face is. And so if you know that, and you're working on face, it's either grip or wrist action. Okay?
Yeah, you understand extension, flexion, radial ulnar deviation, and all that stuff that's going to affect the face.
So now let's say I strengthen the grip, but the face still open at impact. So what could I do on the backswing to get the face more closed at impact? What could I do on the backswing?
You can rotate more.
Well, that wouldn't necessarily, because it's grip and wrist action. So what can I do with
flex your lead wrist?
Flex my lead wrist.
Right.
That would close the face, right?
Yeah.
So now that's closed. Okay.
Yeah.
It's still heading to the right. Okay. So what are some of the things, grip and wrist action, what are some of the things I can do on the downswing to close the face? So one, I can roll it.
Yeah, you can supinate, pronate. Yeah, there you go.
Rotation.
Yeah.
Or I can flip.
Yeah,
so
right.
Like I mentioned, all right?
Yes.
I can do either one of those. I thought about it, so I looked at it, and I tried to think if going more ulnar would close face, and it really doesn't. I don't think it does, unless it's accompanied with rotation or flip.
No, you still have to have supination or pronation.
Yeah,
accompanied with that.
So that's, you go the other way. So you want it more open.
Yeah.
Weaken the grip, cup the wrist, reverse roll, or block. Right.
Yeah.
And so what happens is, I think, and if you do that through all of the impact factors, like the principles for hitting more down or more up are where your center is related to the ball at impact, and then how much lag or throwaway you have.
Yeah, and also left shoulder relation to the ground.
Yeah. Okay. You mean up or down?
Yep.
Okay, I could buy that, I guess.
Yeah, that's one of my indicators as far as angle of attack is the lead shoulder, how far or close to the ground it is at impact.
I've got to think about that. I use that with contact.
Yeah.
Like up and down, or right and left.
Yeah. This is cool because this is an exercise that I did with my staff, because we go through, I call them the mastermind skills, and my first one's low point control. So we go through everything that's going to cause, back, forward, left or right with low point, and then we go to club face, and then we go to sweet spot path control, just like you're doing. It almost reminds me of the old Jim Hardy pluses and minuses a little bit, right? So you got positive path pieces and you got negative path pieces, and face and all that too.
Yeah, this is basically in the book I wrote in '96. Same thing. I call it
perfectly balanced golf.
And that was what it was. If the face is open, do this, 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 and this. Face is closed, do this, 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 and this. And
one of the biggest mistakes is I gave that book to one of my colleagues years ago, and I never could find it again. Any chance I can get one of those?
No, I wish I had. I've got my copies. The only one I've got left.
It's so hard to find.
You can find them on Amazon occasionally. But it was funny when after I did it, Jim Hardy was the biggest. He bought more than anybody else.
I love it.
He bought more than some of the stores that we were selling it to.
I bet.
The time.
But yeah, you used that Corey Pavin, and then you used Tom Kite. I think you used all those guys as examples of both sides, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, but I would like to see, like for me, okay, so doing alpha, beta, gamma, I don't understand it, okay? So I've tried to understand it. I don't understand it, but even not understanding it, I don't understand the importance of it for teaching. Okay, I want more gamma, more positive gamma at the bottom. Okay, so
that's twisting. Yeah, that's just twisting the. Yeah, right. You're just making you're flexing your lead wrist more.
And so, and it may be just that I'm 75 years old. I'm finally getting too old to understand this, but I don't understand the significance of knowing that information. It seems like it's just renamed, and it changes. Like at first that was so easy for me. It's like when you uncock your wrist, that was positive, negative, alpha, and then if you shallowed or steepened, that was positive or negative alpha, and if you opened or closed the face, that was positive, negative, beta.
Yeah.
Steepening, shallowing. So that was easy, but now when I went to the seminar last year, when I went up, it's when the club is in space, it changes. So now this is not alpha anymore. This is now beta. I just can't do it. And I had a hard time with all of that stuff. I have a hard time reading graphs and with terminology on some of that stuff too. So golf machine was hard.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm still probably don't understand all of that, but that's cool though. But that's such a great study for young coaches out there. I mean, I think to kind of break that down. What advice do you give to the young coaches that come to you and say what's the blueprint to get better? Like, what do you have them do? What do you think is important?
Well, I think, going to educational seminars, watching other, teachers with good reputations teach is important. And then the most important thing is just doing as much teaching as you possibly can.
Sure.
And, doing as much research as you can. I mean, I've studied and studied and studied and studied and studied and studied. And the thing that, if you think about like our Golf Digest school, so we had 40 people every day, no matter what we're doing, we're teaching putting. We got 40 people. So that means we got 40 different bodies. We got 40 different mindsets. We've got 40 different histories with golf, how much they know or don't know, and so forth. We're doing that every day.
Yeah.
So we're doing 200 a week. We're doing 5-day schools with 40 people a day, and the multiplication of that is phenomenal. And so I encourage doing group lessons.
Yeah, I agree.
And I say do them for free. What difference does it make?
Yeah.
As long as you may have got enough money to get through, that's what's important. But do it for free, because this is where you learn.
Mm-hmm.
This is where you gain everything. And you develop your own models, and you develop your own preferences, and so forth. And you find out what works, what doesn't work. And if you go around and study with other teachers, then you just multiply those things. You multiply the different ways you can help people. So that's what I'd recommend.
That's great. Yeah, I came up, working for Dana Rader. So about the same time when golf schools were really hot. I mean, we were doing 30-person golf 3-day schools, and I think that's really helped me to develop my eye, because I was having to keep an eye on 4 to 6 people, and you got different personalities, and you're kind of managing all of that. I mean, it's such great advice, and it's such good education. Difficult to get that nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I say you have to create it sometime.
Right.
I would think every club in the country ought to have a Saturday morning swing class, or have a group golf instruction for their members free every Saturday morning or every Wednesday night for 2 hours, where you're doing something like that. To where, I mean, it's like operating on cadavers,
I love it.
It's free, it's free to you. It doesn't cost you anything. And you can make money doing it if you want to charge a little something, but don't make it where it's going to be popular. But I think everybody ought to do that all the time. And, it's just, like I said, it just multiplies your experience.
Absolutely. What are your most favorite books that you've read? Maybe give us 2 or 3. Doesn't even have to be golf.
Well, one of them, this is an interesting one for people on about how the body works and stuff like that. Performance Rock Climbing is the name of this book, and
That's
it's a good book it helped me understand a lot of things about how to physically train and so forth. The guy Udo Neumann is the guy that wrote it. Neumann. Dr. Coop's book, The New Golf Mind, that he did with Gary Warren, is an old one, but it helps you understand learning styles and teaching styles and how they have to match up. And then, I like lots of books. I read Jim Hardy's books. But I forget the name of that one that had the pluses and minuses, but I really like that.
It's all about impact. I think was something to do with that one. Yeah, that one pretty detailed.
That was good. Golf machine, of course. I've got. If I look around, I've got probably 1,000 books in here right now.
That's awesome.
And all in different categories. So I have some on psychology that are not about golf necessarily. You know, that there was a good one called "The Future of the Body." Let's see. Future of the Body. Oh, by Michael Murphy, the guy that wrote Golf
in the Kingdom. Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Michael Murphy. This is a huge book, and what he does is it goes all around the world, and he finds these extraordinary people from these different, goes in to find these people in the jungle that have lived to be 120 years old, what they ate, what they drank, stuff like that. So I like stuff like that. And learning about other things. Fitness, I've got a bunch of books on fitness. Don Chu, jumping into plyometrics. I think plyo is the best way to train for golf. There's some of Gary Gray's stuff I really like. Three-dimensional training, stuff like that. I've got all sorts of stuff on golf club design and fitting repair. I helped do the fitting manual for Nike. When they were doing golf clubs. I have, let's see, what else have I got? I've got pretty books. I've got books, golf courses at the PGA. So yeah. I can go in there and look at the routing when the guy's got a tournament coming up and say, yeah, this is how you play this and play that. So
that's so cool.
Golf, yeah, I'm into it.
So how do you keep that passion for so many years? What's the secret? And I know what do you do to get away from golf? That's two questions, I know, but I wanted to get those in there because I'm curious, how do we keep going? What keeps you going?
It's interesting to me. Every lesson's like a puzzle. And I treat every lesson that I have, I think this is good information for you. I treat every lesson like I had never seen the student before. And so I think it's too easy to try to jump from one thing to the next without getting what you think should be done first. Mm-hmm. And so, I look at it and go, well, you need to do that. Oh, you told me that last week. Well, yeah, but you still haven't done it.
You haven't done it yet.
But I look forward to getting up every day. Every day is a joy to me to get up and go teach. This is killing me, not being able to.
What are you doing to fill your time now?
Well, I try to pick a project out every day to do something. So like going through my instructor training manual, that was pretty good for 2 or 3 days. And then I'm doing reports for my tour players on all of the technology. So doing their K-Vest stuff and doing their SAM putt lab and doing their swing catalyst and doing their TrackMan numbers and doing their video and stuff like that, and just reminding them of where they are and what they need to focus on.
That's good.
So I put a report out for them to let them know that I'm thinking of them for one thing, and
there you go.
In the other, and so I do that, and then for fun, my wife and I teach over in Italy a lot, and so I'll teach over there in the spring and the fall. And so then we'll always take an extra week and travel and do something other than golf. And we do that. We go skiing every year. We have a beach vacation every year.
Nice.
So we'll go do a sandals resort or something like that. And then we'll we have family in for most of the holidays. So we have a big family in for most of the holidays. So we rent a house out on the lake out here in Austin and rent a boat and go out and do that. And so we like to take time away from golf as well. But
yeah, I was going to say, what do you do? What do you do besides grind it out on the lesson tee? Right, you got to have some balance, right?
Yeah, with my age and the fact that I only teach competitive players, I can arrange my schedule. I teach 10 to 5 Tuesday through Saturday, and it's basically what I do. And then, when I'm on the road, I'm on the road. And I do clinics and corporate outings and some stuff like that. And so Yeah, I'm plenty busy. I've got about 75 students. All of them are competitive players, and so that's really a nice balance right there. You know, a lot of them are out of time, so they'll come in I work with them for 2 or 3 days straight, and so it works out good. A lot of them are juniors, and so I like working with them, going on the golf course with them.
All right, so one more question. You've been great with your time. This has been fantastic. If you had to get a message out to the world and put it on a gigantic billboard, what would your message say and why?
Well, you know, this is a very strange time we're in right now, and you know, we've got to be safe for each other right now. Is what we've got to do. So it's going to pass. We'll get through it. It's not going to be normal. I would tell people it's going to be normal until we get a vaccine. Mm-hmm. So we have to, you know, there's nothing brave about running out and slobbering on somebody's doorknob or stuff like that. I would just say, do what they say, be safe, and, you know, we'll get through it. I'm not worried about it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Chuck. This has, like I said, been an honor and a long time coming. It's great. I'm glad that it worked out finally. And again, thank you so much for what you've done for our teaching profession and for golf. We don't say it enough to guys like you that have been in the trenches for so long and give so much back to the game. So I'll be the spearhead to say thank you so much for everything you've done.
Well, you're nice to say that. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Any platform, social that you want to give out so people can follow you and say hello? Websites?
No.
I love it. Awesome, man. Well, we'll just close with that. So again, thanks so much. And you're the best, my man. I appreciate you.
All right. Cheers.
What's up, everybody? Guru back here again with a couple of things before you jump off. First, big thank you to Chuck for coming on the show and sharing his story and incredible knowledge on teaching and coaching that I know is going to help all of you out there. Thank you again to our sponsors, MVDHemp.com. Make sure you use the promo code GURU20 for your 20% discount for life. And also our sponsors, Swing U. Make sure you go and download my app in the App Store, the Golf Guru app. Take advantage of that. Go give me a follow and reach out to me on Twitter or Instagram. My handle is @GolfGuruTV. And also you can check out my website, www.golfgurutv.net, where you can find videos, articles, and more information on my teaching and coaching. If you have a question and you don't want to shoot me a DM, you can email the show at golfgurushow@gmail.com. Music was provided by Kevin MacLeod and Zach Mullet. Leave me an iTunes review and rating. That would be awesome. Get me moving up the charts on Apple Podcasts. Leave me a 5-star rating. That would be fantastic. And as I always leave you with the infamous Jim Rohn quote, study, practice, teach, and then pass it on. I'll talk to you next time. Thank you so much for listening.